Before the screams, there was calm. The Olifants River shimmered under the weight of the sun, its surface gleaming like molten glass. The air was heavy, filled with the hum of insects and the scent of dust. To the untrained eye, it was peace. To those who lived here, it was the silence before the storm. 9 lions moved through the tall grass, their golden coats rippling in the light. They were brothers, forged by hunger and drought, rulers of the dry plains of Kruger. Their muscles told stories of endless wars. Their eyes carried the weight of conquest. But today, they hunted something different: water. The drought had stripped everything bare. Zebras had vanished, buffalo had migrated, and even the wind carried the taste of death. For days, the lions had followed the smell of moisture through cracked soil and burned roots, until the land fell away into a deep green corridor, the river. But the river did not welcome them. It watched. Eyes broke the surface, slow and silent. Only the faint ripples betrayed the 40 crocodiles that owned this stretch of water, ancient, patient, and starved. And today, you will witness what happened next. The day when Kruger's mightiest hunters, 9 lions, came face to face with 40 crocodiles in a war that turned the river red and changed the savannah forever. Before we continue, take a moment. If you want God to bring a miracle of prosperity and true wealth into your life, like this video, share it, and comment where you're watching from. Do it now, because in the coming days, a miracle of abundance will happen in your life. The drought had turned Kruger into a graveyard of silence. For months, no clouds had crossed the sky, and the land had begun to rot under the sun's relentless gaze. The once green plains were now a canvas of dust and bones. Carcasses of wildebeest and zebra marked the trails where life had once flourished. Even the wind seemed afraid to move, trapped beneath the weight of heat and decay. In this wasteland, the 9 lions marched, their golden coats dulled by dust, their hunger gnawing not just at their bellies, but at their pride. They had been rulers once, masters of the southern plains. Their roars had carried across valleys, and their scent alone was enough to make rivals flee. But dominance fades quickly when the land itself rebels. Day after day, they wandered, chasing mirages of prey that vanished into the horizon. Their bodies grew leaner, their tempers sharper. The drought was not just starving them, it was breaking them. Even kings can bleed under the rule of the sun. Then, one morning, a faint smell drifted through the wind. Wet soil. The leader raised his head, nostrils flaring, and the others followed. It was the scent of life, or perhaps a promise of it. They moved as one, across ridges of stone and sand, until a faint glimmer appeared between the fever trees. There, slicing through the desolation like a serpent of green and gold, was the Olifants River. To the lions, it was a vision of salvation. To the rest of Africa, it was a graveyard that breathed. They descended slowly, cautious but desperate. Along the banks, impalas drank in uneasy silence, their eyes darting between the reeds. Birds picked at the mud. Hippos shifted like shadows beneath the surface. The lions moved closer, their paws pressing into the soft earth. Muscles tightened, tails flicked, and for the first time in weeks, the thrill of the hunt returned. The leader's gaze locked on a young impala standing too close to the water. With a low growl, he gave the signal. The attack came like lightning. 9 bodies surged forward in perfect rhythm, a storm of muscle and dust. The impala barely had time to scream before it vanished beneath claws and teeth. For a few heartbeats, the savannah echoed with the sounds of victory, the tearing of flesh, the low rumble of satisfaction. It felt like balance had been restored, as if the old rhythm of predator and prey had finally returned to the land. But the river was listening. Beneath the blood that ran down the bank, something moved. The surface rippled, almost gently at first. Then a shape slid forward, smooth and deliberate. Another followed, and another. The crocodiles had been watching from the depths. their eyes fixed on the celebration of the lions. For them, this was not intrusion, it was invitation. One of the younger lions stepped to the edge to drink, his reflection trembling across the water. The air seemed to still. Then, without warning, the surface exploded. A pair of jaws erupted from the river, clamping down on his leg with a force that cracked bone. The lion roared, twisting and slashing at the water, but the creature beneath was stronger, colder, older. In a heartbeat, he was gone, dragged beneath the surface into silence and darkness. The others stared, frozen between fury and disbelief. They had fought leopards, hyenas, buffalo, but never this. The river had swallowed one of their own without leaving a trace. The leader stepped forward, snarling, eyes fixed on the rippling water, but even he could sense the truth. This was not their domain. The earth they ruled ended where the water began. As the sun dipped low over the horizon, its reflection bled across the surface like fire. The lions stood still, their shadows long and trembling. The thirst had brought them to water, but in the heart of the drought, they had found something far deadlier than hunger. The sun was falling behind the hills when the river began to change. The current slowed, heavy and strange, as if the Olifants itself was holding its breath. The lions stood at the bank, watching the place where their brother had vanished. The silence felt wrong. No birds called, no frogs sang. Even the wind had stopped. The river was alive, but not with sound, with waiting. The leader paced near the edge, ears low, tail flicking. He didn't roar. He didn't need to. Every movement in the water was met with growls and teeth bared. They wanted revenge, but how do you fight what you can't see? The others formed a loose circle, eyes locked on the dark surface, claws digging into the wet sand. Then a ripple, small, quick, followed by another. A head broke the surface, grey, armored and ancient, a crocodile, massive, almost 5 meters long. Behind it, more followed until the water seemed full of them. 40 shadows sliding in silence. Their eyes caught the last light of the sun, turning the river into a field of green sparks. The lions backed away a few steps, but the leader stayed firm, growling deep in his chest. The crocodiles didn't rush. They drifted, slow, deliberate, patient. Night came fast. Darkness crawled over the river, turning it into black glass. The lions moved higher up the bank, resting under the fever trees, their bodies tense, even in stillness. From the water came the sound of tails slapping, faint splashes, and once in a while a low, guttural hiss. The lions didn't sleep. They watched. So did the crocodiles. When dawn returned, the air was thick and grey. Mist hung low over the surface, hiding everything below. The lions needed to eat again. The carcass from the night before was gone, taken by the river. They moved downstream, scanning the shore for another chance. Far away, they saw movement, a herd of zebra approaching to drink. The leader's ears twitched. It was the only chance they'd get. The coalition moved into position, silent, focused, every step measured, every breath controlled. When the first zebra bent its neck to drink, the leader charged. The others followed, bursting from the reeds in a storm of muscle and dust. The herd scattered, hooves hammering the ground. One zebra slipped near the water's edge, trapped. The lions pounced, dragging it down in seconds. Then the river struck again. From beneath the zebra's body, 2 crocodiles lunged at once, jaws open wide. The lions reacted too late. The prey was ripped from their grip and pulled under. The water exploded with white foam and blood. One lion jumped forward, trying to bite back, but another crocodile slammed into him from the side, throwing him backward. Chaos took over. Roars and splashes merged into a single violent sound. When it ended, the zebra was gone. The crocodiles disappeared. Only the muddy water remained, swirling with blood and broken reeds. The lions stood in silence, breathing hard, eyes fixed on the river. They had lost another meal, almost another life. The leader stared at the current, his chest rising and falling. The message was clear: the river had rules, and every step closer meant another chance to die. The night after the second attack crawled by under a heavy sky, the kind that pressed the heat back down to the earth. The lions rested near the fever trees, their bodies streaked with mud and blood, but no sleep came. The air smelled of decay, and even the hyenas that followed from a distance kept away from the river. The Olifants was quiet, too quiet, its surface flat as glass, its silence filled with something colder than peace. The lions lay still, ears twitching at every sound, and every breath carried the weight of something unseen beneath the water. By dawn, the mist rolled over the valley like smoke, swallowing everything in pale gray. The lions moved slowly, muscles stiff, eyes scanning the surface where one of their brothers had vanished. The crocodiles were out there, motionless beneath the fog, invisible but present. Every now and then, a ripple betrayed them, a slow swirl of water, a faint slap of a tail below the surface. The leader of the coalition stood closest to the bank, staring into the mist. His mane hung damp and heavy over his shoulders, his face scarred from fights long past, but this enemy was different. He had killed rivals, chased hyenas, broken buffalo, but he could not strike what would not show itself. The growl that rose from his chest was deep and raw, carried by rage and hunger. It rolled through the still air, joined one by the voices of the others, until the sound filled the valley like thunder. The ground vibrated under their roars, but the river didn't answer. Instead, the surface trembled, small waves spreading outward, as if something below was stirring in reply. The lions fell silent again, breathing hard, their eyes burning with defiance. The crocodiles moved, not fast, but close, the kind of movement that says, "We hear you." When the sun finally tore through the clouds, the lions began to move. They split naturally into two groups, 5 patrolling the upper bank where the mud was thick, 4 circling farther down where reeds covered the edge. The leader walked ahead, paws sinking into the soft ground, his reflection rippling across the water. The tension was unbearable. A faint shadow passed beneath him, his muscles coiled like wire, his body lowered, tail stiff, and then he struck. A violent lash of claws cut through the surface, a sudden burst of spray and sound. The river exploded back at him. A crocodile lunged upward, its jaws gaping wide, but the lion leapt aside, missing the bite by inches. Another male crashed into the water from the flank, his claws scraping across the reptile's back, tearing loose patches of dark skin. The crocodile twisted, tail whipping through the air like a club, but the lions were already upon it. Sand and blood mixed beneath them, roars shaking the reeds, the sound of claws against scales echoing like thunder over the valley. It was chaos, fast, brutal, real. The fight didn't last long, but it changed everything. The crocodile, wounded and disoriented, slid back into the river, vanishing into the current. The lions stood together, sides heaving, their bodies covered in water and blood. The river calmed quickly. But it was not peace, it was warning. The leader looked out across the surface and saw them coming. From every direction, eyes began to rise from the water, glowing green in the sunlight. Dozens of them, dozens. The crocodiles moved closer, forming a loose line just below the surface. 40 bodies drifting in silence, blocking the width of the river like a living wall. The lions backed up a few paces, growling low, but none turned away. Dust rose from their paws as they braced themselves, their eyes locked on the water. The air between land and river tightened until even the wind refused to move. Then came the first sound, a deep, hollow rumble from within the river, like the earth itself was growling back. The crocodile's tail swayed beneath the surface, the water beginning to roll and bubble. The lions roared again, louder than before, every muscle alive with tension. The echoes clashed over the valley, land against water, flesh against scale, the rhythm of predators claiming the same ground. When the noise faded, the river went still. Not even the insects dared to sing. The lions stood watching, knowing this silence meant only one thing. The next time the water moved, it wouldn't be a test, it would be war. The morning after the standoff came with no peace. The sun rose hard and white over the Olifants, burning through the mist and laying bare the battlefield. The water was lower than before, slow and heavy, its surface dark with mud and shadows. The lions stood restless along the bank, their bodies still dripping from the fight. They had drawn blood the night before, but so had the river. And now, both sides were waiting for the next strike. The first sound came from downstream, a deep splash followed by another. Crocodiles were moving, dozens of them, their backs breaking the surface as they gathered in a loose formation. The river had turned into a line of armored bodies, their eyes fixed on the lions above. The leader growled, pacing along the edge. The scent of blood still hung in the air, and the coalition's hunger had turned to fury. The drought had taken their prey. The water had taken their brothers. There was nothing left to lose. When the first crocodile climbed halfway out of the water, the leader charged. The ground erupted under his paws, sending sand flying into the air. The rest followed, 9 golden shadows against the dark river. The first impact was brutal. Claws slashed across thick scales, tails whipped through the mud, and water exploded in every direction. The sound was chaos, roars, splashes, and the crack of jaws snapping shut inches from flesh. The river had finally come alive. 2 crocodiles lunged together, jaws closing around one lion's side, but he twisted free, blood spraying across the reeds. Another leapt from the water and met a paw mid-air, its snout smashed sideways by sheer force. The leader roared, slamming his claws into the face of a crocodile twice his size, driving it backward into the current. The water turned red, then brown, then red again. The line between land and river disappeared. The battle raged for minutes that felt like hours. The lions fought in unison, each movement instinctive, precise, built from years of hunting as one. They bit at tails, struck at eyes, and drove their enemies back step by step. For every strike they landed, the river answered with more jaws, more teeth, more violence. It was not a clean fight. It was a storm of survival. When the water finally began to calm, 4 crocodiles had vanished into the current, their blood drifting downriver. The rest began to retreat, slow and deliberate, slipping back beneath the surface. The lions stood panting, soaked and trembling, their fur streaked with mud and blood. The leader looked down at the river, his reflection broken by small ripples that shimmered like warning signs. The crocodiles had retreated, but the war wasn't over. It had only paused. The sun climbed higher, burning against their backs. Birds began to return to the sky, circling above the chaos left behind. The lions moved to higher ground, their bodies steaming in the heat, their eyes still locked on the river below. Around them, the reeds bent in the wind, whispering like the ghosts of what had just happened. For the first time in days, the lions had stood their ground and won. But even victory in Kruger comes with silence. Beneath the surface, the river was already healing, already hiding what it would bring next. If you're enjoying this story of Africa's wild power, don't forget to support the channel. Hit the like button, subscribe for more epic battles, and share this video with someone who loves wildlife as much as you do. Every roar, every scene, every legend continues because of you. The day after the battle was quiet, too quiet for Kruger. The air carried the smell of wet earth and blood, heavy and sweet. Vultures circled above the river, waiting for remains that would never surface. The lions rested under a cluster of thorn trees, their chests rising and falling with slow exhaustion. The victory had cost them blood, but they had held the river. The ground beneath their paws was theirs again, or so they believed. By midday, the heat returned like punishment. The river glimmered under the sun, calm, smooth and empty. No movement, no sound, no trace of the war that had painted it red the day before. The lions rose one by one, their fur stiff with mud, eyes dull with fatigue. They moved toward the bank again, cautious but confident, sniffing the wind for the scent of death that still lingered. The leader stopped at the edge and stared at the reflection of his mane dancing over the water. The silence made him uneasy. A ripple broke the image. Then another, At first small, harmless, like the breath of fish, but then the water began to move differently, slower, deeper, as if something enormous was shifting beneath the surface. The lions froze. Dust blew around their feet, and the sound of insects vanished. The surface bulged, a low, steady wave rolling outward from the center. Then the water split open. From the depths came the crocodiles. Not 2 or 3, dozens. They surfaced together, long, dark backs rising in perfect formation, spreading across the width of the river. The sunlight flashed against their scales, their eyes glowing gold and green. 40, maybe more. The current moved with them, slow and deliberate, turning the river into a living wall of armor. The lions stepped back instinctively, muscles tightening, claws sinking into the mud. The calm had been a trap. The leader growled, teeth bared, tail lashing from side to side. His roar cut through the air, echoing across the valley. The coalition formed around him, shoulders touching, eyes locked on the advancing wall. But this time the river didn't attack. The crocodiles stopped just short of the shore, floating motionless, their heads barely above the water. It was a warning, a message that the deep had returned, stronger than before. The lions waited, breathing hard, every nerve alive. For long minutes, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, the silence broke. One crocodile lunged forward without warning, its body surging from the water like a black wave. The leader met it head-on, claws tearing through flesh, his roar shaking the reeds. 2 more erupted beside it, their jaws snapping at his legs. Chaos returned in an instant. The lions exploded into motion, the bank erupting in dust and spray. The sound of water and roars filled the air again. The fight was brutal and fast. One lion bit down on a crocodile's eye, another clawed at its tail as it thrashed violently. The river seemed to come alive beneath them, the ground vibrating from the power of the reptiles pushing upward. A lion was thrown sideways, crashing into the reeds. Another slammed a paw into a gaping mouth just before the teeth closed. The air smelled of mud, blood, and rage. When it ended, the water was thick with color again. 3 crocodiles floated motionless near the center, and the others began to pull back slowly into deeper water. The lions stood soaked, sides heaving, their roars echoing through the valley. The leader's mane hung heavy, dripping, his gaze fixed on the dark surface that once again began to calm. The river seemed quiet, almost peaceful, as it swallowed its dead and smoothed over the chaos. But every lion standing on that bank understood the truth. The crocodiles hadn't retreated in defeat. They had only tested the limits. The deep had awakened, and now it would wait for night. The storm came without warning, thick clouds rolling over Kruger and throwing long shadows across the river. The air was heavy, the smell of rain mixing with the iron scent of blood that never truly left the Olifants. The lions stood restless under the dark sky, their bodies tense, their eyes fixed on the water. Every instinct told them the river wasn't done. The wind changed, and the reeds began to sway like whispers. The deep was stirring again. Raindrops started to fall, soft at first, then harder, cutting into the dust and turning it to mud beneath their paws. The leader moved toward the edge, his mane soaked, eyes glowing under the gray light. He could sense it, the same force that had pulled his brother under, the same rhythm that had haunted them for days. The water rippled once, then again, as something vast shifted below the surface. The others growled low, circling closer, waiting for the moment to strike. The sound of the rain hid the faint splash that came next. The river broke open. A massive crocodile burst from the water, jaws wide, tail swinging with the strength of a tree trunk. Its head alone was the size of a lion's chest, its back scarred with years of battle. The leader roared and charged without hesitation, slamming into the reptile's snout with a force that sent spray flying in all directions. The 2 titans collided in the shallows, one built for the land, the other for the depths, both fighting for the same ground. Water exploded around them as the others roared from the banks. The crocodile twisted violently, its jaws snapping just inches from the lion's throat. The leader struck again, claws raking across the thick armor, teeth sinking into the flesh near the jaw. The monster rolled, dragging the lion halfway into the current, but he dug his claws deep into the mud and refused to let go. The rain came down harder, thunder rolling through the valley as the fight turned into a blur of motion and sound, roars, hisses, splashes, and the sharp crack of bone meeting scale. The other lions charged in, slamming into the crocodile's side, forcing it back toward the shallows. One bit down on its leg, another raked its flank, and the water turned dark and violent. The crocodile thrashed, its tail catching one of them across the ribs and sending him tumbling into the reeds. Still, they pressed on, driven not by strategy, but by something deeper: survival, vengeance, dominance. The ground shook beneath the weight of it all. Then came a silence between thunderclaps. The leader had his jaws locked around the crocodile's neck, his claws anchored against the stones. The reptile fought back with one final twist, trying to drag him under, but the lion held. His muscles trembled, his mane was drenched and heavy, his teeth buried deep in the armored flesh. For a moment neither moved, just the sound of the rain striking water and the low rumble of thunder above them. With one last burst of strength, the lion tore back his head, ripping through the crocodile's throat. The river erupted in a cloud of red and foam as the beast convulsed, then went still. Its massive body floated lifeless, the current slowly pulling it downstream. The leader released his grip and stepped back, sides heaving, his eyes following the fallen giant as it disappeared into the depths it once ruled. Around him, the coalition stood silent, their roars replaced by the sound of rain falling over victory. The storm eased, the clouds breaking open to reveal streaks of pale sunlight over the valley. Steam rose from the wet earth as the lions gathered near the bank, blood and water dripping from their bodies. The leader lifted his head, his roar carrying across the savannah, deep, heavy, final. It echoed through the trees, across the ridges, and down the river that had swallowed so many lives. The kings of the land had faced the kings of the water, and for the first time, the river had bowed. As the sound faded, the water flowed quietly again, slow and calm, as if pretending nothing had happened. The crocodiles that remained stayed hidden, the current carrying away their dead. The lions turned from the river one by one, limping, breathing alive. The battle was over, but the river still watched, waiting, remembering, patient as ever. The storm passed with the fading light, leaving the Olifants drenched and steaming beneath a silver sky. The rain had washed away the blood, but the scent still clung to the air, heavy and raw. The lions stood along the bank in silence, their manes dripping, their bodies trembling from exhaustion and pain. Around them, the battlefield was quiet. No roars, no splashes, no movement, only the slow rhythm of water carrying away the dead. Night fell slowly over Kruger, the horizon burning orange for a moment before surrendering to darkness. The wind cooled, the insects returned, and distant thunder rolled far to the east. The coalition gathered under the fever trees, their golden coats now dark and dull, their eyes glowing faintly in the gloom. 7 lions remained. 2 had vanished into the depths, one taken by surprise, another by the storm. The survivors didn't mourn aloud. They simply breathed, their silence saying what roars could not. The leader stood apart, facing the river once more. The moonlight caught the edge of his mane, the same color as the mud beneath his paws. He watched the water slide past, calm now, hiding the monsters that had tested them. Every scar on his body was a story. Every drop of blood spilled a reminder that even kings bleed. Yet he still stood, scarred, soaked, but undefeated. In that silence, his presence alone spoke louder than thunder. The night carried the smell of wet grass and smoke from distant fires. Hyenas called in the distance, unsure if they should approach. Even they knew the valley didn't belong to them tonight. The lions lay close to each other, their sides rising and falling in slow rhythm, the exhaustion of victory settling in like a weight. The leader remained awake, eyes never leaving the river, his breath steady and cold. Before we continue, take a moment. If you believe in the strength of survival, in the will to rise again even after the hardest storms, like this video, share it and comment where you're watching from. Do it now, because in the coming days, something powerful will awaken in your life. And if you wish to honor this story and support our pride, use the super thanks below. Whether it's $5, $20, or $100, every contribution helps us keep these real legends of Africa alive for the world. The night deepened, stars burning bright above the dark valley. The river moved quietly, its surface smooth again, as if pretending nothing had ever happened. But every now and then, a ripple would spread. Small, slow, whispering that something beneath still breathed. The crocodiles were not gone. They were waiting, rebuilding, remembering. The leader turned away at last, walking toward the open plain where the moonlight touched the tall grass. His paws left prints in the wet soil, washed by rain but marked by war. Behind him the others followed in silence, a broken but unyielding brotherhood disappearing into the night. Far downriver, a single pair of eyes rose above the surface. Enormous, ancient and still burning, the deep was not finished, and when the next season came, the lions would return to this place once more, drawn by the same hunger, the same law, the same river that never forgets.